Thank you.
Based on Pierre Boulez's 1963 novel, there's been 6 films, including Tim Burton's diabolical 2001 remake. There's been 2 TV series, one of them animated. There's been comic books. There's been the fantastic Simpsons musical, Stop the Planet of the Apes, I Want to Get Off. I don't know, for you, was there a feeling, I'm going to just rip all this up and start again?
Well, I think the script, in many ways, not so much did that, but it allowed a fresh perspective on the whole mythology, because it's the origin story, and I think no better place to start than the origin story. And especially when you're talking about the origin of a species, it's a great place. But I feel like what we've tried to do, which is so different from the other films in the mythology, is that we're trying to tell the story in this day and age, in our contemporary world, and obviously, you know, the sci-fi aspects of the early films are very much based in that kind of heightened reality, ape cities and things like that, but they were always a mirror held up to who we were with the civil rights movement or fear of nuclear annihilation or those kind of things. But the great opportunity with this film was actually we got to base it in our world, and I think any future films that we make will be more so like that, will be more about the zeitgeist.
I know that you've said that it's not a continuation of the other films. It's an original story, and you've cited Batman Begins as an example of how you get to that origins of starting a whole new sort of fresh approach. I don't know whether it's something that you always had to be aware of, the comic book guy element, that those who need to hear, you know, get your paws off me, you damn dirty ape, or need to see some reference to Icarus. Were they sort of things that you were kind of aware of too? There are fans who want to revel in the legends and iconic.
Certainly, and I think there's enough in there for those people who are looking for really explicit references to the other films. There's enough in there to be satisfying, I hope. At the same time, I think there's a real danger to being slave to, to the original aspects of the storytelling, which were products of their time, you know, and you can't be slave to something that's 40, 50 years old. I'm telling a story for a modern audience, a very sophisticated audience, that want to believe, you know, in the same way that, as you said, I mean, one could cite Batman as a really good example. They don't have kapow, whiz, bam, you know, in those moments. He's based it in a world that we can relate to, and I think that's what makes it very powerful. For these sorts of stories that are, in a way, are Greek myths, the modern Greek myths. You know, you want to base it in a world that people can understand.
Like a lot of people, the summer's been rough this year. There's been a lot of bad movies, and it's always great when a genuinely good movie like this comes along. And done incredibly well in the States. The cinema score is A-. You know, the audiences love it, critics love it. Did 54.8 million over the weekend. People thought it would do 30 to 35 million. It's kind of like Michael Bay with opposable thumbs. It seems to be a film that has smarts about it, has a sort of a sense of there's all the things you want in entertainment, but there's also this sort of heart to it. And I don't know if you kind of feel, well, now I can relax, or whether you felt when you made the film you were happy that you'd made the film you want to make and you relaxed then. I don't know how you...
No, I don't think you ever do that. I think, funnily enough, in many ways, I was. You can never tell. You can, especially when your face is so close to the glass for 2 years. I had no idea how people were going to react. It could have gone either way for me, and I knew that I had an extraordinary team of people working with me, and we all collaborated in such a way that we came out of it feeling very, very proud of what we'd achieved. And you know, more often than not, and this is my first Hollywood film, my first Hollywood experience, but from by way of stories or what I've read or what people have told me, you can enter this world of big studio filmmaking and you can get chewed up and spat out, and I think the very interesting thing about my experience on this film is it is always a challenge. You are always dealing with many different people. You're having those creative conversations every day, and everyone's got an opinion, but ultimately, if you're all on the same page, if you're all looking to tell the same story, you're okay. You know, if you want to design a horse, you design a horse, not a camel. And sometimes with other studio films, you can see that camel getting made, and it's not necessarily the responsibility or the fault of the filmmakers or the studio even. It's just the fact that too many moving parts are moving in opposite directions. And fortunately, with this, enough people involved were keen to make sure that this story worked, and I think that has to do with the fact that this is a franchise that was quite wounded in many ways, and was sort of forgotten about, and so when we set out to make this film, everyone's expectations were like, why do they want to make another one of those? So everyone's expectations were here, which is actually quite a nice place to be.
I know your agent was delighted when he figured out that this is the biggest leap that any filmmakers made from their one film to the next. And for your first film, The Escape is shot in Dublin, which you actually bizarrely at one point related to as an ape colony when these guys were all kept inside their prison. But that was a $1.8 million movie. This is a $93 million movie. But Tom Rothman from Fox sat you down at the start and said, I'm going to make you feel like you've less time and you've less money. I guess in a way that was sort of a, you know, maybe that was a good thing because you felt there was an urgency about getting the job done and not sort of, you know, luxuriating in millions of dollars of budget.
Oh yeah, and funnily enough, which sounds incredibly extravagant of me, but even with $93 million, you're still up against it every day. I mean, you have to remember that when you're dealing with a film crew of 400, 500 people, rather than my team on The Escapists, which numbered 40 to 50, you suddenly see where all the money goes, and that was that was our production budget, and that, you know, our production budget was a tiny percentage of the 93 million. You know, that this technology that we use, performance capture, is very expensive, and there's every shot costs tens of thousands of dollars. So I think yeah, we were always under the gun. We had 56 days to shoot this film and 275 scenes, and on The Escapist I had 24 days to shoot the film and 95 scenes. So actually, I was more under the gun making this film than The Escapist, which is amazing. I've
been told to go, but very quickly, the big roaring rampage of revenge over San Francisco that Caesar and his pals have when they go nuts and destroy the bridge and so forth, that was based on a Paddy's Day parade, wasn't it? I can't remember. Was there footage kind of superimposed? It did look like a Paddy's Day parade at one point.
Yeah, it's all going on outside these walls at the moment. Yeah. I mean, our intention was to. I mean, that's the thing. The next film will be that conflict between humans and apes if it goes ahead, and that's fascinating. You know, that's the idea of these two species, these two civilizations clashing. Our film, in many ways, is Spartacus. It's the idea of an uprising, and it leads to an escape. They want to get to a better world, a better place. They're Shangri-La, and that place happens to be across the Golden Gate Bridge, and they need to get across in order to get there. And obviously, we stand in their way.
Sweet film. Well done, son. I gotta go. Lovely to talk to you. Yeah.